Hello everyone. As you know, my name is Rachel Rucker, and I did my research paper topic on the best practices and tools for nonprofits to use to communicate with millennials and gain their support. Why am I studying this? Because competition is at an all-time high for resources for nonprofits, and they need to connect to a newer generation of donors who are doing things differently than every generation before them. And this is vital to study because I found several gaps in the literature about specific information on best practices for communicating with millennials and the reasons why millennials give the way they do, who they give to, etc. So with all of this in mind, my research question is, what are the best tools for nonprofits to use to communicate with millennial donors of time, money, and resources in order to gain their support? How did I do this? I executed a survey, a 9-question survey done through a website called Zoho. The reason I did a survey is simply because the millennial population is too large to be observed directly, and so this ended up being an anonymous survey administered to people ages 20 to 38, and I ended up using convenient sampling simply because of time and resource constraints. What I planned to happen was I was going to send out 200 requests for participation through my social media, email, in-person requests, 25% response rate, total anonymity assured. What actually happened was I got 30 respondents to my survey out of 100 visitors to the survey. 5 people skipped the whole thing, and it was mostly done by people I know and people the respondents knew. So what were the results of this whole shebang? Well, the first one was that all the applicants either said that they supported or would support a nonprofit, so I did not have to throw out any responses saying that they didn't care about this topic, didn't give to nonprofits, because that would have skewed the data. And then this next one is the first best practice for nonprofits. It's talking about how nonprofits have been given resources by millennials in the past. It's showing with their time is the most, but what's interesting is face-to-face contact is the least. So that's best practice number 1, don't use face-to-face. This next one is how frequently are nonprofits communicating with millennials through these different platforms. It's saying they communicate mostly through email and social media to millennials and least through newspaper articles. And this is significant because of this next chart, which is talking about what's the best way that millennials consider for nonprofits to reach out to them and elicit their support. And they're saying email and social media are the best ways, newspaper is the worst way. So we know that nonprofits are already doing something right. So that is best practice number 2 identified by this survey. Best practice number 3 came from this next graph. It's talking about what kinds of content are most likely to elicit an emotional response with millennials. And if you know anything about nonprofit giving, emotional response is key if you want to get a donor. And it's saying here videos are most likely to get that emotional support, and written word is the least. So best practice number 3 for nonprofits, using those video content. The next one is about online giving campaigns such as Giving Tuesday, and this was a very surprising one because most people stayed in that middle ground, which we just learned that millennials are most likely to give through email and social media, so this might be a topic for further research. This next one is asking what specific social media platforms are most likely for nonprofits to reach millennials. It's saying Facebook, it's saying Instagram, and it's saying Twitter. None of the others even got a response, so this is best practice number 4 for nonprofits, use these platforms. This next one is saying, if a nonprofit sent you a newsletter, would you respond? It's almost split 50-50, so I think this is going to come down to content, like that video versus written word thing. So it's important for nonprofits to see newsletters are important, but it's going to depend on content. That's in the next best practice. This one is very important because it's talking about what specific content millennials want to see from their nonprofits. They want to see educational stories about the issue, they want to see success stories, and they want to see organization information. They do not want to see financial information really, or fundraising goals and updates. So this is best practice number 6 for the nonprofits. And so this final one is an interesting one because it's about a new concept called small change roundup, where basically you spend 65 cents, 35 cents gets donated to a nonprofit of your choice, and it's showing that a lot of millennials are actually in support of this. So this is the final, I apologize, this is one number 6. And so what have we learned? We have identified 6 different best practices for nonprofits to use to reach millennials, and we've identified even some future areas for study on some questionable responses that kind of contradict each other. So from here, nonprofits can apply this information to better solicit